There's a lot happening right now in the reality TV space. But what people are reacting to in this particular situation is not just drama for entertainment or petty gossip for clicks. It's something much bigger. It's accountability. And that word, accountability, has become the thing that reality television has been running from for years. The audience isn't reacting to a single moment or a single argument. They are reacting to a pattern that has been slowly forming in the background, season after season, episode after episode, until finally it became too obvious to ignore. Once certain footage disappeared, certain questions stopped being answered, and certain explanations no longer lined up with the reality viewers could see with their own eyes, everything shifted. Because when pieces of a story get removed instead of addressed, attention automatically moves to the gaps. Viewers stop focusing on what made it to air and instead start wondering what didn't. And that is where the real story begins. One of the easiest mistakes to make as a viewer is to assume that backlash comes out of nowhere. It doesn't. The audience rarely explodes over a single scene. What actually happens is accumulation, layers, repetition. A storyline gets introduced with confidence, it gets packaged in glossy editing, and it gets delivered with charisma until over time, the delivery stops matching the results. In this case, the central storyline was real estate, high-end real estate, million-dollar properties, luxury finishes, big design elements, imported materials, and the constant promise that these builds represented vision, ambition, and long-term strategy. And on the surface, it genuinely looked impressive. The homes looked expensive, the aesthetics were high-end, and the confidence behind every pitch was strong enough to make viewers believe the investment would pay off. But real estate is not built on vibes. It's built on numbers, timelines, markets, and demand. And slowly, cracks started to show. Homes meant to sell didn't sell. Properties intended to rent didn't rent. Timelines extended and explanations shifted without the results to justify them. That is when viewers started asking very normal business questions. And those questions changed the tone of everything. The fascinating part is that the questions being asked were not shady, they weren't disrespectful, they weren't even confrontational. They were basic, logical business questions that anyone with even a beginner understanding of real estate would ask. Questions like, why did the investment property fail to move? Why did a home intended for profit turn into a personal residence? Why did the rental plan quietly disappear? The moment those questions surfaced, the storyline hit a wall. Because accountability requires answers, and answers require transparency. But instead of transparency, viewers got something very different: avoidance. A key conversation which would have directly addressed those questions never made it to air. It was filmed, it was discussed, it existed, and then it vanished. And when footage disappears, audiences don't assume innocence. They assume strategy. That deleted exchange accelerated the backlash more than anything else because it didn't just hide a moment, it hid clarity. According to extended footage and accounts circulating online, the decision to live in the property was not the bold strategic move it was presented as. It was not about leveraging or creative positioning. It was the last option available after the market didn't respond. And that reframes everything. If a business move fails, it fails. That's part of entrepreneurship. But reframing failure as strategic brilliance doesn't change the outcome. It only distorts the truth. And audiences today are far less willing to accept distorted truth than they were 10 years ago. Once it became clear that the home didn't sell, didn't rent, and didn't generate income, questions became unavoidable. Removing the footage didn't make those facts disappear. It just confirmed that the answer made someone uncomfortable, and discomfort always makes viewers more curious. The bigger issue here isn't the house itself or the failure of one property. It's the pattern of presentation versus results. Huntsville is not a market where million-dollar homes fly off the shelf. That's not new. That's not controversial. It's just market reality. Yet the same formula keeps getting repeated. Big builds, big prices, big confidence. And when the market repeatedly gives the same answer, No sale, no rental, no meaningful return. Continuing the same approach stops looking like innovation and starts looking like refusal to adapt. That's where the audience steps in, because real business operates on the principle that results matter. You can stage a home beautifully, you can decorate it with luxury finishes, and you can film it for television. But if the numbers don't move, the business isn't moving. Viewers don't need an MBA to see that. They just need memory. This is where the editing becomes its own character in the story. When things aren't going well, reality TV has two choices: show it or hide it. Showing it would provide accountability, relatability, and honesty. Hiding it protects the storyline, preserves image, and maintains the illusion of success. And in this case, the choice was protection. Critical questions disappeared. Serious concerns were replaced with upbeat music, confidence-filled commentary, and those smooth, optimistic talking points that make everything sound like it's going according to plan. But controlled optimism only works when the audience doesn't have access to information outside the show. That era is over. Social media has made it impossible to control the narrative once the cameras stop rolling. Clips get replayed, timelines get compared, viewers connect dots. Once editing becomes selective, trust becomes fragile. Then comes the contrast. While all of this was unfolding on screen, something else was happening off screen, something that made the storyline look even more manufactured by comparison. Melody hosted a sold-out event. No storyline, no manufactured drama, no editing, no producers deciding which moments were allowed to exist. Just real people showing up in real time without the medium of television validating it. And that matters for one reason. Success doesn't need permission. It doesn't need to be edited, curated, or repackaged to look believable. It simply exists. And that message sent a quiet but loud message. Influence can grow without reality TV. Revenue can happen without controlled narratives. Audience support doesn't need filters. That's when viewers started asking a new question. If she can produce real results without TV, is TV helping other people look successful without the results? Then Carlos King entered the conversation with commentary about accountability, and that layered in a whole new dynamic. His point was clear. If you sign up for reality television, you sign up for accountability. You don't get to quit when the questions get uncomfortable. You don't get to disappear when criticism lands. And while his take was aimed at cast members who avoid accountability, it invited a much bigger question that production rarely wants to address. Does accountability apply to editing choices too? If cast members are expected to stand on their actions, should production be expected to stand on the fullest version of the truth? Because you can't preach accountability while actively removing the scenes that create it. That contradiction isn't lost on viewers. In fact, it's fueling the backlash. Reality TV used to thrive on the assumption that viewers would watch, react emotionally, and then move on. Not anymore. The audience today analyzes, they compare, they pause, they revisit, they fact-check. They cross-reference interviews, social media posts, and old clips. And once they spot a pattern, they don't unsee it. That's what has changed the power dynamic. Viewers don't rely on the show for the full story anymore. They treat the show as one version of the story, and then go find the missing chapters elsewhere. That's what production underestimated. Because once the audience starts doing their own investigative work, selective editing does the opposite of what it's designed to do. It doesn't control the narrative, it confirms that the narrative needs controlling. However, before we get to the fireworks, let's rewind to where the first eyebrow visibly twitched, the real estate storyline that was supposed to scream prestige, wealth, and generational success.